I'm going to just come out and say something so controversial and brave that I just don't know what's going to happen if I say it. Are you ready? Strap in your seats, because it's coming. I fucking love Halo 3. There, I said it. I think it's great. And, what? What? Most people like Halo 3? Oh, well, that makes this a lot easier. Has there ever truly been a moment in Halo where its sandbox has been as fun as Halo 3's? There were so many fun little things in it that haven't seen the light of day since, and it's honestly a bit of a surprise. The way that the flamethrower would destroy pallets, and the spike grenade would send projectiles flying that could instantly kill you, the firebomb grenades making fire a whole lot scarier, the deployable gravity lifts and shields, and I just loved it! Now, it looks like Halo Infinite is planning on following in its footsteps, but what does that mean? Chances are, if you're still kicking here and watching my content, you remember the physics video I made. No, not that one. Not that one either. No, not that one either. Yes, that's the one. So 343 has announced that they'll be doing these monthly Inside Infinite blogs that essentially dig at the surface of Halo Infinite's development and show some of the thought process that goes behind the whole thing. In this blog, the bulk of the discussion is based around the sandbox, which goes hand in hand with the physics of the game. It's your tools, your agency as a player, and what you can choose to do in the moment-to-moment gameplay that the different scenarios offer. One of the first things that they talk about is the dance, which just refers to the frenetic gameplay we all know and love. The, should I pop the head off that grunt? Should I shoot the fusion coil so the whole group goes nuts? Should I chuck a grenade and mop up while they all struggle to get up? That's the dance, and it's our bread and butter. In this blog, there's a mention of all these different factors in the design principles, such as what makes equipment or weapons fair. Do they melt people too quickly? Do they counter too hard? Do they not counter enough? Etc, etc. Now, essentially, all of this talk led to the discussion of the individual items being put into the game, and there's some vague allusion to there being an old vehicle being reintroduced in Halo Infinite. Now, if we're sticking to the crowd-pleasing mentality that 343 has expertly chosen this time, my money's on seeing a return of the chopper. That thing was literally the best vehicle Halo has ever had. Fight me. The boost could be used so interestingly, and the design was badass, the sounds, everything. It just looked and felt good. More importantly, it was just fun. Now here's the thing. I haven't looked at anything being mentioned with regards to Halo Infinite and thought that it didn't sound fun. At least in terms of the sandbox. And that's because on paper, looking at everything we've seen revealed so far, it is just Halo 3 with some bells and whistles. Obviously, it's got Halo 5's mobility and sprint, but it's leaning twice as far into the balance of play that Halo 3 leaned into with its diverse weapon palette that wasn't just everything as a laser that we saw in Halo 5. But there's just something gnawing at me under the surface that says they're still holding back on us, and that we're going to be surprised at what we see. They mentioned a use for boxes that hasn't been in Halo, and I expect the ability to straight up push them. That opens so many doors to so many interesting things, and I can see 8 million custom games being built around that alone. But that again begs the question of what we don't know. It's clear that they want to take the physicality of Halo 3 and double down on it, so I keep thinking to myself about the open-endedness of the game. I can't help but to repeat myself consistently. I just need Halo Infinite to push what physics and gaming is capable of. I want to just state emphatically that I truly believe that physics are built into Halo's DNA, and I feel that if its emphasis on them in earlier titles wasn't as thorough, the games may not have stuck the landing. The world of gaming as a whole seems to have come to a standstill in terms of physics simulation, and I think that's a damn shame. I think maybe the only decent example of a game prioritizing this and doing something cool with it is Half-Life Alyx, with its environmental puzzle solving making a triumphant return and the liquid simulation as a kind of added bonus. VR seems to actually explore the idea of physics quite frequently, but VR isn't quite massively adopted, so I'm hesitant to truly call that something that's pushing the games industry forward, until it's gotten to more of a foothold. Even Bungie themselves seem to have largely moved away from physics in their titles, with Destiny seeming to focus more so on just a gunplay feel and not really tinkering with anything outside of that realm. It's a real shame because I think that there's a wellspring of potential that I think has remained largely untapped in the industry. Perhaps it's my limited knowledge of programming, and it's just not very technically feasible at the moment, but I'd hope not. At the end of the day, we really just don't know a whole lot about Halo Infinite and what they're planning on doing with the sandbox. Now, we've obviously gotten this update that kind of talked about the sandbox a little bit and all that the bread and butter that comes with it, But with that, we're still missing a lot of information with regards to the game, and we don't know if they're pushing the envelope or not. So I can't really say for sure that I'm really disappointed or that I'm excited or anything like that. I can't really lean in any particular way because we just don't know yet. We have no clue what the game really offers. Nothing more than even before the July reveal. It's honestly almost as if we've gotten nothing for the game even since July. But that being said, though, all that my mind goes to when I think about physical sandboxes and toys to be able to play with is it always goes back to Breath of the Wild and the way that that game just really gives you freedom. Hey, have I ever mentioned that I love physics? Have I also ever mentioned that I love Zelda? No and yes? Well, good news. Link and I are here to teach you about gravity. Just kidding, kind of.
Hey, Billy Buddy, the Science Italian here to talk to you about the science of rocks and bomb arrows.
As sort of a small little example of what I'm talking about, this camp that I'm walking up to here, I just kind of decided to cut down this tree here, not really thinking too much about the consequence, and then a beehive falls off the tree and attacks the mobs that I'm actively fighting. Not only can you do stuff like this, you can pull metal from lakes, and you can start beating enemies with it while levitating it around. You can light the grass on fire and set an entire camp, essentially, into chaos. You can fire bomb arrows at barrels that are nearby and blow up, essentially, the whole camp. There's so many little different things you can do, and I think it's very comparative to Halo. But I still feel that Halo has never quite gotten to the level that Breath of the Wild actually allows you to, in terms of agency. The way that this game fluidly allows you to choose the way you want to go about situations is something that I admire so deeply and really, really think that Halo could take a note from. Halo is a franchise that's always been in a state of flux, almost perpetually. There's never truly been a Halo game that is exactly the same as its predecessor, to the extent that a lot of other franchises have. You know, something like Call of Duty, you can have series that are almost identical entries, whereas Halo does tend to have some meaningful changes to the flow of gameplay. The only exception I would say to that would be the difference between Halo 2 and 3, but a lot of people would tell you that the sandbox of those two games is fundamentally different. And I more or less agree. Change is in the very nature of everything, and there's nothing that you can do to avoid it. It's only natural for things to evolve and to become different. That's the way that things go. Now, with all that said, I think you can do things to the Halo formula without completely destroying the entire franchise. I think you can do things extremely meaningful to it, such as what Breath of the Wild offers in its sandbox. Now, I don't necessarily know that that's what we're going to see in this particular title. We aren't far enough to know yet. We don't really have an idea of what we're looking at with Halo Infinite. I suppose at the end of the day, all I really can leave this with is saying, you know, let's wait and see. I'm very hopeful, though. I have some thoughts regarding the way that the gameplay is going to shape out. A lot of the talk in that sandbox video makes me think they're really holding back on us and conserving a lot of future announcements and mechanics and such. So I'll be very curious to see how that shapes up. I really hope more so than anything that Halo Infinite actually allows the sandbox to flourish in Forge more so than anything. If we could return to the time where you would just jump into a lobby with friends in Forge and just mess around for hours and hours and hours and try and find new, crazy, exciting things you could do with the Forge palette, I think we'd be in a good place, and I think it would be so much fun to be back at that point again. That's pretty much the gist of everything I wanted to talk about today. You know, I know it's been a while since I really posted any content, and I'm kind of few and far between with regards to what I've been putting out. But I'm trying. I promise you I'm trying. There's things I'm trying to do and trying to come up with. It's a little bone dry right now. But I actually have been feeling pretty creative lately. So I think we're going to be in a better spot now. I do want to take a moment to thank all of the people who do choose to support me on Patreon. And again, if you would like to support me on Patreon, there is a link to the Patreon in my description. I want to thank Nuck and Futz at the 197 tier. Thank you so much, Nuckin. I want to thank Tease at the $10 tier. Thank you, Tease. I want to thank Ryan at the $10 tier as well. Ghost Warrior at the $5 tier. Screamy at the $10 tier. And Rye at the $10 tier. Thank you guys so much. It's been almost 8 months since we really kind of started this whole adventure of content creation here. And I just want to say, guys, I'm just as grateful as I ever have been. I swear. I really am so grateful that you guys are willing to support me here directly on Patreon. But more than that, I'm grateful that I have people who are willing to support me on YouTube. You know, the fact that there's still people who are willing to watch my content and enjoy it, it means a lot to me. It really, really does. And I feel like, as of lately, I've kind of failed you a little bit in that regard, and I am trying to make good on that. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a wonderful day. Adios.